Welcome to the Sports Guys. Happy New Year. First episode of 2026. We are so happy to be back. We had a little break there, and it was nice. We got to spend time with our families. I got to go to Florida. Rob got to do a lot of fun stuff with his family. We got a special guest on today, Cole Houck. How you doing, Cole?
Hey there,
Hey,
happy to
Cole.
be on again. Last time I was on here, we talked about NBA. That was a lot of
Yep.
fun. A lot of NBA stuff has happened since then, but it's college football this time of year, and I've been locked into the playoffs especially. So just happy to be here and talk about it.
Do you have a good holiday and New Year?
Yes, yeah. Holiday was good. Was busy working the sports high school basketball job I told you guys about before. We had one of the biggest tournaments of the year. It was at Broughton High School,
Mm-hmm.
and there was teams from Florida, Ohio, Nevada, a couple teams from Virginia. They had come over
Mm-hmm.
to the say Broughton High School for 4 days, so that was real
Nice.
busy work, but it was a ton of fun.
Fantastic. Robbie, how you doing, man?
Nice. Doing great. Coming off the flu, but definitely bouncing back. Had a really good Christmas and got everything put away. Feels really good. Everything's built.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, Games are hooked up. Sports equipment put together. Everything's good. So I feel like I have to go back to work tomorrow, unfortunately, but I'm ready. I feel like we got through the holidays
Mm-hmm.
in the best possible way.
I'm glad your voice is back. I had the same thing you did
Yeah.
just a couple days later, and it wasn't really until today I felt like I could do a podcast. So I'm glad my voice is back too. But we both kind of
Yeah,
weathered through it.
we were in rough shape, man.
We were, we were. So Robbie, let's get your first take on the playoff games themselves. What did you think of that? We had a really fun 31st and first with all that great football.
It was interesting. The blowouts were kind of wild, and the tight ones really had you on the edge of the seat. So I didn't have too much in the way of surprises, even though two of the two of the games went against what I thought was going to happen, but they were going to be close. So I knew it was. But Ole Miss probably surprised me the most, um, because I thought they were going to fold without their coach. And other than that, I knew they were going to play tough, and I really have a lot of respect for their quarterback and running back, like a tremendous amount. But I felt like they were going to run into a moment where they needed a coach to calm them down, and I didn't know they had that. But I do think their defense coordinator, elevated, is quite a good guy for them. So,
You know what's remarkable about that?
Golding.
I told you before that game. I thought that it was a real possibility they could beat them because I was not that impressed with Georgia this year. They don't feel like the dominant Georgia I'm used to. But also, what we didn't know happened, and it's been reported out of the Ole Miss locker room, is that Trinidad Chambliss would act like a coach on the field and in the
Yeah,
locker room, and that's what he
you
did. And
could see it.
apparently, the players really rallied around him rather than the coaches. So that was interesting.
Pete Golding is getting a lot of the credit for this, and he should, for steadying the waters. But he said it himself. He said, "We have a lot of really good coaches in this locker room," and I believe that that's got to be true. It's
Mhm.
it's clearly they're holding it all together. They're playing really tough, complementary football. They took on a really tough Georgia team, and they outscored them. And it was a really good game. I enjoyed that one probably the most.
I think it was the
Well,
best game of the
Miami,
four.
Ohio State was pretty cool.
It was good. That was the second best, but I think the best was Ole Miss and Georgia, the
Hmm.
rematch and the revenge game. I will say that the other game that was the most surprising to me was Texas Tech. I thought they would lose, but I didn't think it would be a situation where they couldn't even get a first down. That was very surprising to me, and you really saw what happened with a Big 12 team when they go up against a top 10 team, and I was really
That one
concerned
didn't
about that.
surprise me at all for some reason.
Yeah, Cole, what was your take on the four games?
Well, I did not go 2-2 in my games. I believe my predictions that I had for myself, I went 1-3 on, and every game that I had was a surprise to me, at least relatively speaking. I wasn't expecting Miami to take care of business. The Oregon game, I was way off on. We can get to that a little bit later. I thought Indiana would win. That was the one I got right, but I was not expecting it to turn out the way it did. And then, like you guys said, the Mississippi Georgia game was fantastic. It was so much fun to watch in the second half. And I predicted Georgia win that one too. So just a ton of surprises for me personally.
Wow. Okay.
For some
Interesting.
reason in that game, I thought Ole Miss was going to hit a moment where there was a turnover or things started going bad, and they weren't going to have that coach to get in the ear of Chambliss to calm him down, or there was going to be a moment where they needed their head coach and they didn't have him. And I don't, it never happened. So, or if it did happen, obviously Golding did a nice job. So That was where I feel like I was the most wrong.
About four
Um,
times in that game, Chambliss was essentially dead in the pocket and found a way to squeak out and kind of squib out to the side like Russell Wilson used to do,
yeah,
and on the
no,
run and made like two or three of the best throws of his career on the
not
run.
Russell Wilson. That's not my comp for him.
Well, I'm saying in the old days, Russell Wilson was really squeaky like that, and he used to get out of those big messes in the pocket. Bottom line
I've
is
been
Chambliss made three or four of the best plays of his career in the same game. And that was pretty amazing.
My main point this year on quarterbacks has been I think there are two that have separated, and I said this really early in the season that Mendoza and Chambliss were the two best quarterbacks in football,
Hmm.
and it kind of played out, and I really think it kind of proved out. And I think the comp on Chambliss is Patrick Mahomes.
Patrick Mahomes.
I
Yep.
haven't seen a quarterback play as similarly to Mahomes because I think we can overreact and overstate things. But I really think his style looks to me like the most like Mahomes of any quarterback I've seen since Mahomes left. It's not that he's the best I've seen; it's just he's the most like Mahomes, and so
Yeah.
that's been really exciting football to
It's a
watch
good
him.
comp. It's a
He's
good
gonna be
comp.
really exciting at the next level.
He is. So Cole, my thought was Jeremiah Love was the best back in football. I thought Lacey was number two, and it really proved out, I think. What was your
Mm.
thought about Lacey and being, I think he's the best back in this current Final Four.
Oh, there's no question he is.
Yeah, I think he probably is the best back in the four. I will say I like the Miami Dennis Fletcher guy a lot. He
Mhm.
continues to show a lot of upside, but
He's
he's
really good.
young. He's not as consistent as Lacey
Mhm.
is. Um, yeah, I understand the Patrick Mahomes comp as well. I think there's somebody that's I can't think of right now, but I want to say there's somebody that's even better than at scrambling than Mahomes is as far as
Mhm.
running backwards to get a forwards pass, like Chambliss did over and over again that second half. But yeah, it should be a lot of fun to watch. I'm not 100% sure yet.
I agree. In terms of Fletcher, I agree. But I think Miami has the best two-headed monster at running back because they've got Brown as well. He had two touchdowns,
Yeah.
100 yards. Their
When
two backs are just fantastic.
when I
Um,
was pouring over the stats, I was not very surprised. Kwan Lacey is the third ranked running back in all of college football with
mhm,
1,464 yards. And let's see, Fletcher was surprisingly low. He was 50th.
mhm.
So what I took from that was I started to analyze it backwards. He got better as the season went on. So he didn't have a full long season of great stats to really put him up there. But if you were to look at who's who's been great the last three or four games, I would put him right there with Lacey. So um, I think that definitely there's Kwan Lacey, and then there's a big drop off until the next guy, and then so he's third. Above him are some teams that play in lower divisions and teams you never heard of and all that stuff. So
What I
um,
found really interesting, Robbie, was Chambliss is that rally guy in the locker room for Ole Miss. The rally guy in the locker room for Miami is Fletcher. And they said that early in the season he wasn't getting a lot of carries. He never got discouraged. He didn't hang his head. He didn't really start coming on until the second half of the season. But even before that, he was still the rally guy in the locker room. He's one of those energy guys. Everyone get together, players only meetings. So I think he's always been that leader for them. And then he's just been coming on production
yeah,
wise.
yeah. So, but at the end of the day, his stats aren't up there because he's 50th. But if you look at his production in the last several weeks, he's as important to them as anybody on their own team. So
So Cole,
definitely,
thoughts about Indiana being by far the best team in the country? It looks like, or do you have a different take on that?
Yeah, I'm not ready to crown them yet, but I can't give you a good reason on why we shouldn't at this point from what they've showed us. I mean, we can get that Alabama game a little bit later, but I figured they would win, and I figured they would win probably by two scores. I'm not sure what the betting line was, but my guess is probably around there. I didn't expect it to be 38-3. Their offense attack is amazingly balanced. I'll go into more detail about that when we talk about the game, but it is
Mhm.
just a ton of fun to watch. They're very consistent on defense. Yeah, Signetti's a great coach. You know what? That's how it's been said already.
They're so well coached. They tackle so well. They block so well. They don't make mistakes. They make you pay for your mistakes. They don't do penalties. I can just go down the whole list of everything I love about Indiana. And I know Joel Klatt said that he's the new Nick Saban. And I think that's right. That's how he runs his program.
When I look statistically at all the teams in the playoffs and kind of around the country, the two teams that jump off the page at me statistically are Indiana and Ole Miss.
Hmm.
And I didn't expect Ole Miss to be like that, honestly. I knew some of their stat categories are impressive. But if you look statistically at their offense and defense, they really are in the top everywhere. And so Ole Miss really, I can't imagine why somebody would leave that program. Um, is it just money? I don't, because they've built something really special there, and it shouldn't be such a surprise. I was a little surprised they've gotten this far, but it shouldn't be. Honestly, they're really strong across the board, and that's in the SEC.
So
So
do you think he should have left and not led his team through the playoff, or should he let him through the playoff no matter what the consequences are? Lane Kiffin.
I think he should have led them through the playoff and let the chips fall where they may. If you want me after my team is finished playing, I'd love to have a conversation with you. I mean, that's kind of where I think coaches should be.
Yeah. What do you think, Cole? You think he should have taken the opportunity, or
You're saying he should have waited to take the LSU job until after, right?
100%? I can't
Understood. Because
understand why anybody wouldn't just come out and say, "Look, I'm not going to talk about a new job until my team is done playing." Period.
yeah, I
Yeah,
a
I mean,
thousand
that's
percent agree. There's no
that's
reason
where
not
they
to.
all should be, not just him. I'm not singling him out.
Hmm.
I think all coaches should say, I've committed to this team this year. As soon as this year's over, I'm wide open. My phone's open. You
Yeah,
know,
I agree.
I,
And
w-
he tried to coach too, but they told him, no, there's no
I don't
way.
know.
You're already
Hmm.
going, sending everybody off to Baton Rouge. We're gonna find somebody else. You go ahead.
He's already signed 6 guys off of that staff, which I think is also crazy. He's just rated their whole coaching staff.
Is it
So
mostly offensive guys? I actually haven't looked at the people
it's
yet.
on both sides, special
It's on both.
teams, wide receiver guys.
Although I will say he got the memo because all the coaches are being held in place, and he had a big part in that. He said, I
Hmm.
will wait to pull you guys because you have to stay with our guys. So, I
Hmm.
mean, he is concerned about their well being to an extent. I mean, he said, you need to go on the airplane with me right now if you're going. But he's backed off and sent them all backward and let them coach. And so I think it's a huge mistake, but it's not the only, he's not the only one that made that mistake. But I like what BYU did. I like what some of these other coaches that had to take it, they stayed. The guy from North Texas gave, a huge amount of money um,
Hmm.
from a bonus he got
I
back to
think that
his
was
coaching,
Tulane. I
or
think that may have
Tulane.
been
Sorry,
Tulane. But yeah, I
it
know what
was
you're talking about.
Tulane.
I was really happy about that as
Tulane.
well. I think it was John Summerall, the Florida
It
going to Florida.
was. It was John Summerall.
Hmm.
He gave a big chunk of his bonus, was it? Back to the
Hmm.
NIL for the team he's leaving. So
Hmm.
like that's pretty cool.
It
I
is.
want to I want to put out a hypothetical out there. If Ole Miss does end up winning, they win the next 2 games, win the national championship. Do you think those coaches that aren't making as much money, like besides the Lane Kiffins, but people under like the wide receiver coaches, special teams, which you guys have talked about, is there any chance that those guys end up staying with the program? What do you guys think?
I think it's possible. A lot of them
Yeah,
haven't signed contracts yet. So
I don't think they all automatically want to go live in Louisiana. I mean, they might be really settled with their families, and they might feel committed to the kids that are there and say,
hmm.
if you stay with us, I'll stay with you. Like the the loyalty goes both ways.
The other thing, the reason Lane Kiffin also is rooting the team on, like he posted right after the game, boy, that was a lot of fun to watch, is because he's making financial benefits off it. He got
Yeah,
500
he is.
grand, 500 grand for the team winning, and he'll get $1 million if they win the semifinal. So
Yeah.
he
Wait,
actually
I
gets
I didn't
he
know
has,
that.
yeah, he has
Yeah.
bonuses.
Yeah.
Hmm.
I know he made
Why?
So
500,000. Yeah.
so he has financial incentive for the team to win.
Yeah. But I don't think he's a bad guy. I think he loves the guys that he recruited. I think he feels really like they took a chance on him to an extent because he was starting to get a little bit of controversy around him.
Hmm.
And I think he really genuinely wanted to stay with Ole Miss through the end of the season. But I just think that he couldn't pass up the opportunity in his mind
Hmm.
for what he thinks is the best job in college football. And
So that
I think Saban told him that privately.
is
So
true. So last preliminary reaction, Cole, you said you were very surprised about the Oregon game. What was it about it that shocked you so much?
It was the lack of offense for Texas Tech. I mean, Oregon played about what I expect them to, and I know they had a good, strong defense, but I just did not realize that Texas Tech was going to be that poor on offense. They made so many mistakes. It was the dumb penalties they've been doing all year. They weren't the ones forcing the fumbles like they have been doing all season. They were the one fumbling the ball over and over again. Baron Morton looked like a shell of himself from what he looked like the rest of the year in the Big 12. It was just
Mhm.
was not expecting any of that.
So what do
yeah.
you think the reason for that is? Because I had the same reaction. They scored 43 points per game. They were one of the most high-powered offenses in football until they got to real competition. So what's your theory?
I don't have a theory besides the whole, bye teams are cursed. They get too much time off. I have no other explanation for it. They were at home. I don't really understand even after the fact what they did
Mhm.
wrong besides the stupid. It was the fumbling and then the picks. Those were the biggest things, and I don't really have explanations for that besides the fact that they hadn't played a game in a while.
And actually, Oregon's offense was not that great in that game, and I thought Rodriguez and the Texas Tech defense played pretty well. I really do. They were put in a lot of bad situations, short fields, things like that. But I don't have any problem with the way Texas Tech played defense. They just had a dysfunctional offense. What were your thoughts on that game, Robbie?
I think Oregon left a lot of points on the field. I think it could have been a blowout. Texas Tech's defense carried them all year. And the problem is they were reliant. Their motto was go get three turnovers and we're gonna win this game. And most of the year they were able to do that. But I think when you're playing a fairly conservative team that has high powered 5-star blue chip recruits where you can't bully them and push them around, you're not going to get that level of turnovers. So
Hmm.
your team is going to give up a touchdown, then a field goal, then a field like you're used to turning the ball over and not giving up those points. So I think I'm not surprised at all that one-sided football team, Texas Tech, that spent all that money on their defense, um, was unable to move the ball on offense. I think
Hmm.
it's not too much of a surprise, in my opinion. Um, they were rated pretty low offensively in a lot of areas. I was surprised at their power index ranking. They played a lot of good teams. I didn't know that before doing a little research on that, but
Obviously, they played BYU twice and played them really, really well
I,
twice.
I felt like their schedule was weak, and it
Mhm.
wasn't. It wasn't. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, I'm not surprised that Oregon had control of the game the entire game. Like that's not a surprise to me.
The only other stunning thing I'd mention is Alabama. 3 points, shell of themselves, can't run the ball, couldn't run the ball really most of the season. Didn't look like the Alabama we're used to. Their defense got shredded a number of times this year, especially in that game. And I just wonder, where does Alabama go from here? I know Kalen DeBoer, they're always calling for his head almost every week. 4 losses in Alabama land is not what they're used to. And any thought there, Cole, what Bama can do to get back to Bama?
I'm honestly not 100% sure. It's pretty much just locked down everybody they have already. Bernard, who I think is, if not their best receiver, their one, their second, 1A,
Oh yeah.
1B with
Hmm.
Williams, he's a senior, so he's going to be, in the
Hmm.
NFL, he's gone.
Hmm.
It's just trying to keep everything that you have and really hold that Alabama name and, trying to recruit guys out of the transfer portal and out of high school. I haven't looked at it. I'm sure they have a great class coming in, and they should be able to use transfer portal to their, best abilities, being Alabama having that A logo around all the time. But that's all they can do. I mean, it's question marks with DeBoer about winning on the road and a little bit winning big games, much more on the road. But he's had trouble on the road his entire tenure at Alabama, and you guys saw what happened when they played Indiana in Indiana.
I thought Alabama would lose, and I thought Indiana would win comfortably, but not like that. And it was interesting. I was watching Robbie in Amelia Island when I was down there. We watched 4 different channel preseason or preview games to talk about these different panels, what they thought was going to happen. And almost all of the panels picked Alabama, almost all of them. And all of them were saying that Indiana has had a great season. We love Signetti. They were saying all the right things. And then they were like, but when it gets to this time of year, it's all about the blue bloods. It's all about Bama and Georgia. And we just don't believe it yet until we see it. And that was Paul Feinbaum and all those guys. he was talking about how he was playing golf with a bunch of Alabama graduates, and they were just totally disrespecting Indiana. They're like, they're a
Yeah.
basketball school. And so I've never seen more shocked faces than watching those same panels 3 hours later when they were trying to
Yeah.
explain what just happened to this blue blood program that looked like a little bit better than Texas Tech, but not much.
Yeah, I mean, I was a little surprised at how imbalanced it was, but I did feel like Indiana was going to beat them. But um, I, for some reason, I really bought into Alabama beating Georgia earlier in the year. I felt like if things go right with this passing game, they can beat really good teams. But after watching the last three games for Alabama, I realized I don't think Kalen DeBoer is a fit in the SEC.
Mhm.
I don't think he teaches a physical enough brand to play Ole Miss, then Georgia, then Tennessee, then Auburn. You know,
Then,
like
te- then Texas.
then Texas. Like
Yeah.
you need to be able to run the ball and play defense. And
Mhm.
he can't run the ball. And his defenses are not his concentration of his team.
Mhm.
His even at Washington, his teams were throwing teams. And
Mhm.
I just don't think that really works well in the SEC on a week to week basis. You can beat a Georgia on a given week, but I don't think you can string together enough wins against the powerhouse teams that are going to bully you. They're going to beat the living hell out of you, and you need to be able to stand up to them. And you need to recruit linemen that are a little bit angry. They got a little rock in their shoe. I mean,
Well,
you
that
want,
was the shocking thing. That was the shocking thing
yeah,
is both their lines got absolutely whipped, and they're usually filled with
whip,
5 stars and NFL players. They got
yeah,
absolutely demolished on both sides of the line.
yeah. And Ty Simpson getting hurt. I mean, I don't think that was really an accident. Like getting a cracked rib. He was taking shots. They were getting bullied, and Indiana was doing the bullying.
Mm.
So I think the victory against Georgia was smoke and mirrors, really. I think that they need to take a hard look at their style and say, is this a fit in the SEC? Because Indiana plays kind of like Alabama used to. Um, they're going to come out and pound the ball down your throat. And oh, by the way, they have three NFL wide receivers and the Heisman Trophy winner throwing the ball. They kind of remind you of LSU with
Mhm.
Joe Burrow. And they just got talent everywhere. And they have the best coach in college football who he said it. He said, when my team comes off at halftime and they're losing, I don't tear them a new one. I build them up. I tell them it's going to be okay. You did a lot of good stuff. You did a lot of good stuff. He said when they come off the field and they're up by 30, I tear them a new one because I want them to stay hungry. I want them to,
Mhm.
fight hard. And that's like straight out of the Saban and um, Coach K mindset. All these guys, they have the great coaches have the mindset of winning, um, which is he's always scowling. He never looks super happy until the game's over. Usually, Signetti looks happy. But I think Alabama needs a little more physicality and a mindset of I'm going to run it down your throat and we're going to play hard defense. And while they're just sort of a premier passing team with a lot of finesse, they're going to keep getting bullied.
Yeah.
I completely agree with everything that Rob said. I didn't realize the context of DeBoer's coaching before all this. First off, he was at Indiana in 2019 as the offensive coordinator. That's kind of funny. I didn't realize
Mhm.
that. But after
Mm,
that, he went to Fresno State and then Washington, as you guys know, playing a really pass-heavy West Coast offense. Not a lot of
yeah.
Mhm.
defense. They didn't need
Yep.
to run or play defense in the Mountain West or the Pac-12 up until that point. They just scored
Mhm.
more points than you, plain and simple. Like you said, that brand of football does not work in the SEC, and he
Mhm.
has not adapted, and I don't know that he's going to be able to adapt with what we've seen so far from him. So I think that's a really good point. And like you said, Alabama might need to take that in consideration if they do decide to move on with him. Go when he finds if they find somebody else, find somebody that has played a SEC or maybe even a Big Ten because that's more moving the
Mhm.
ball, play a hard
Yeah.
nosed defense, that sort of thing. That style of coaching, that style of ball, because it'll translate much better in the SEC than what DeBoer's done so far at Alabama.
That's a good
Right.
point.
Right.
So, Cole, I've got a hypothetical for you. If I had told you 2 years ago Indiana was going to be the standard in college football and everyone was going to try to copy and kind of model their program after Indiana University, would you have believed me?
No, I mean, hold on, was that before Signetti got there? Is that what you're
Yeah.
talking about? I
Yep.
mean, definitely not. They have had
It was a
not
joke.
a terrible history by any means. I think some people will kind of oversell that, but it has not been very good the last years, before Signetti got there in Indiana. So I don't definitely not, but now, Signetti's been a winner everywhere he goes. You can Google him. So that's
Am
part
I
of
the
it.
only one who just laughs when I see him scowling on the sideline? I just outwardly
I do
laugh.
too.
It's so funny when he's
It
scowling.
reminds me of Belichick so much, man.
Doesn't it feel like an act a little bit? I mean, I
On to
don't think it's always
Cincinnati.
real.
On to Cincinnati.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, it's hilarious. Well,
It
boys,
reminds me of Belichick.
let's dive into the material. Here we go.
Let's go.
All right, let's do a shout out to our sponsor for tonight, and that is Academy Sports. They've been a longtime sponsor of the program. We love Academy Sports. We get a lot of our equipment, our shoes, and other things there. Robbie, what do you love about Academy?
Love it. They're always there for all of our sporting needs. The boys are playing a bunch of different sports now, so it's constant trying to keep up with everything. They're growing like weeds, so that we're always replenishing, refreshing. We just had Christmas, got a bunch of stuff, fishing equipment, and everything else. We are excited. Their birthday's coming. We're gonna get biking stuff. So Academy Sports has everything you need. They have great equipment choices, colors, sizes, different brands, and good pricing. So I love it. It's nearby, so proximity. It's really good. And you wanna. Not everything needs to be bought online. I mean, sometimes you want to go in, try something on, see it in person, put your hands on it, feel what the material feels like, whether it's good quality. And Academy Sports has incredible quality, so can't highly recommend it enough because it's so good, and we're so proud to have them as a sponsor. They really do it right, and we love getting all our stuff there.
They've got amazing selection. They have really nice people. Every time I walk around, I just find something else I love. And so, guys, go check out Academy when you get a chance. Check academysports.com. Go check out their app or else go into one of their stores and check it out today.
They've been a great sponsor, and they do everything right as a company. I'm really proud to be affiliated with them, and we can't wait to get the next stuff for the boys. So go check them out. Go get your stuff there, and you will be glad you did.
See you next time. All right. Well, this is our episode 100 CFP and Bowl update. We're going to get into the 4 games, break them down by stats, get you guys' takes on each of them, and also we're going to look at a couple of the key bowl games from the last 2 weeks. All of this, of course, heading towards the January 19th national championship game. We've got 4 teams left: Hurricanes, Oregon, Indiana, and Ole Miss. Ole Miss, what's surprising about that, Rob and Cole, is that Ole Miss is the lowest ranked out of the 4 and the lowest power ranking, and they're out of the SEC, which I think is really interesting.
Out of this group, maybe
I think out of this group, they're the
they're
team that you would
15th.
say,
They're 15th in the country. Not too
yeah,
bad.
yeah, 15th in the country. But I'm saying it's interesting that out of these 4, the team that has probably the least chance of winning the national championship is from the SEC. I just find that interesting. But any thoughts about this Final Four? What do you guys think?
I think it's awesome. It's so good not to have the blue bloods in there, and to have a whole new wave of good young coaches, great quarterback play, strong defenses. All 4 of these teams have strong defenses,
Mm-hmm.
and and all the main conferences are represented, so it's a good representation of college football. I
So
love
some
it.
of the some of the critics are saying that we've gone to 12 teams, which we all love, by the way, but they're like that's watered it down a little bit. Now you're getting blowouts. But my point is that I don't think you would have had these 4 teams if you hadn't gone to the 12-team system, and I think these are the 4 best teams. So I still like the 12-team system. Do I like that we have a couple blowouts along the way? No, but I think that's just likely.
What would have the top four been? I guess Ohio State would be in there,
You'd have
and
Ohio State in there. You'd have Indiana. You'd have Georgia, and you'd have
Texas. Well, no, maybe not. Was Texas Tech ranked fourth?
Texas
Or
A&M. You'd have Texas A&M.
Texas A&M. Yeah, you'd have Texas
Oh.
A&M. So you wouldn't have Miami, you wouldn't have Oregon, and you wouldn't have Ole Miss. You have three of the
Right.
four that would not be there.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, Indiana made it in. Otherwise, these other teams just kind of bullied the other team.
Yeah.
Like this was
Yeah.
a physicality play for all these teams.
I personally like the system. I said in our preview episode, Cole, that I thought 10 of the 12 were right, and I thought that JMU and Tulane did not belong there. I know why
Right.
they're there. I know why they're there, but I had a feeling they would be blowouts. And what I'd like to see the committee do next year is to rebalance it so that we do indeed get the best 12 teams. That's what we want to see.
Well, I completely agree. First off, that you guys, you want the best 12 teams out there for a product. It's entertainment. It's money making at the end of the day. I completely get that. I like what Rob said the last time about having a play-in game between, I guess you said like, was it 10 and 14 or 8 and 12, something along those lines of those four worst teams.
Mhm.
No, I think you'd have make a spot for an FBS team and the last team out, like Notre Dame or something like that. And whoever wins gets to go in. But yeah, whoever's the 12th seed or something like that
Mhm.
has to play their way in or some kind of play-in game where maybe you might have two play-in games. I don't care really how they do it. I just want to eliminate the lawsuit from the FBS teams. If they fight
Mhm.
their way and they get a monster win and they
Mhm.
deserve to be there, cool. Go play Indiana. Like after
So if
that.
you did two playing games, you'd go to 14, is what you're saying, and you'd have
Yeah. Yes.
the four lowest
Yes.
seeds have to play in. Yeah,
Yep.
I like
I
that.
also wanted to say, going off of the bye week, I think teams are now 1-7 with bye weeks in the
Yes.
playoffs, which
Yep.
is just an unbelievable record. Last year, I thought would be an anomaly, and it is proving that it isn't the anomaly. That's the standard, at least up in, through 2 years of this. To
Mhm.
the point that I think we either need to really minimize the break, like, give them the same timeline as the other games, which is going to be tough because of how many bowl games they have. Or, and I don't love this out loud, but the buy is not working clearly, is that we need to make it 8 or 16 teams.
Mhm.
It needs to be an even bracket so it works out evenly like a Elite Eight or a
Well,
Sweet 16 would, so that nobody gets bye games because the buys aren't helping. They're hurting. We need to, just need to avoid those at all costs. What do
this
you
is
guys
what
think about
Joel.
that?
This is what Joel Klatt is saying, and I agree with him. He said that the layoffs way too long. Why are you giving up
Yep.
the January 1st, January 2nd, January 3rd time frame to the NFL? He's like, we don't need to do that in college football. We should let them finish their exams, and then you have a game that weekend. Maybe they're the two playoff games are
Dan
playing.
Lanning said it. Dan Lanning said it. December is playoff weeks and you finish on January 1st.
Yeah,
And
January 1st,
that's
or
the best way to do it. And you can sprinkle in bowl games for entertainment purposes, which is what it is. It's great for alumni. I love it. Our team played, Virginia played in the Gator Bowl. It was an exciting, fun little afternoon to watch or evening. It didn't mean much, but it meant a lot for the seniors. It meant a lot for the alumni. There's a win there. You can win with bowl games sprinkled in, but you
Mhm.
you keep the entire playoff on a nice track and you finish it right around the 1st of January. Um, Rest versus rust has always been a uh, point of contention and a point of emphasis on which is
Mhm.
more important. I think rest is overrated for college football because I'll tell you why. Um, Most players are not a little dinged up where 1 week off is going to help them that much.
That's
But
right.
if it is, 1 week's fine. But nobody's going to have surgery and heal by the time the games happen. So really all you're doing is creating rust. And so there's not much of a rest component with having a
Mhm.
month off.
Yeah, I
There's
agree.
more of a detriment to your physicality. The teams that had a week off got bullied. You know,
Mhm.
they went in there and they weren't used to having their heads knocked in and looking through their ear holes. I mean, they they felt like a jolt of physicality that they just weren't ready for. And Dan Lanning said it. He
Right.
said rest versus rust.
True.
I'd rather have no rest than I would everybody having 4 weeks
I feel like
off.
the Natty game should be on January 5th, tomorrow. It should be on Monday, and it should be right after January 1st. It'll be on the 5th. It's a Monday night. This thing has gone 2 weeks too long. when you have it on January 19th.
Yeah.
So I agree.
And one thing I heard from the programs, Indiana has had very physical practices to get them ready for the physicality that's on the field. A lot of the other coaches are too scared to do it. So they're doing lots of walkthroughs and lots of film study. But when they get out there, everyone's puking through their helmet, out of shape a little bit, and not used to locking up with 360 pound Georgia linemen and stuff like that. So
100%.
rest versus rust is the big consideration, and I think rest is overrated.
Well, here's your bracket heading into the Final Four. Oregon, IU, and Ole Miss. Miami will play next weekend. Really looking forward to those games on Saturday. You guys have any leans so far thinking about those two games?
Yeah, first off, I want to say to your point of the rest versus rust, Rob, the score of the Indiana game, the only team that won with the break in the last 2 years, the score after the first quarter was still 0-0. So even Indiana that beat them 38-3, those 38 points came in the three final quarters. They didn't score in the first quarter. So clearly they were still shaken up from the rest as well. I mean, seriously, it's too long. Everybody knows it.
It's a good
Yeah,
point.
agree.
Yeah, they wait way too long. 3 weeks after the finals, it doesn't make any sense.
No, they need a week off, maybe rest up a little bit. Lots of walkthroughs, maybe one physical practice and one practice where you're going half speed, and then just lock in and get ready, you know?
So we'll give our final picks at the end of the program, but my leans, just to let you guys know, I think Indiana is clearly the best team in football, and I think they will dismantle Oregon. I think Oregon's defense is very good, but I think their offense is not what it has been in the past with some of the other NFL quarterbacks they've had. It's good, but I think Dante Moore needs another year of maturity. So I see Indiana eventually taking control of that game in the second half. And then I see Ole Miss running out of the magic a little bit when they go up against Ruben Bain and the boys. I think that they're going to really disrupt what Ole Miss likes to do. And I just think Miami's defense is playing at just another level right now. And I think they're not asking Carson Beck to do very much, which is good. They have that really good running team that comes out of the backfield. And I think that game will be much more low scoring than Ole Miss is used to. So that's kind of where I'm leaning right now. You guys have anything?
Yeah, I'm still not sure about this Oregon-Indiana game. Everything tells me Indiana, but it's tough to beat them twice. We can talk about that a little bit later. I think I'm leaning towards Miami, and I'll explain those reasons a little later as well. But both these games should be really good. I think the spreads are probably within a field goal for both these games as well. I mean, everybody's expecting to be pretty close games for both of them. It's tough to predict.
I agree that Indiana had beaten them early in the season. It is very tough to beat someone twice. I agree with that, and that's why I do think it'll be a much closer game than people think. But I do think Indiana's the better team. Robbie?
Yeah, I think Indiana should probably win it all from here, because of the way they're coached and their physical, mental combination is just lethal. And they want to bully you. They want to beat you by 100. They physically come in there and just swarm, and they have athletes. They have every level is good, and their coach is on another level. So I'm really impressed with Ole Miss statistically, and what I've seen out of them. I feel like their quarterback running back combination can carry them against a better team and beat the other team. It kind of reminds me of Kalen DeBoer's Washington.
It's true.
Where Penix and Odunze were that special. But Miami's defense is incredible. Fletcher's coming on as a powerful running back who's really finding his eliteness. I've been a proponent of Beck all year. I know he had some bad games, and Tom, you and I were talking about this earlier. He gets in trouble when they ask him to do too much, but when they're asking him to throw 15 times a game, they're pretty darn good because their defense is going to keep down the score. They're going to hand the ball to Fletcher a lot, and they got Malachi Tony.
It was almost like the last time he had a bad Beck game, because there's good Beck and bad Beck, and the last time he had one was against Louisville, and they lost the Louisville game. And I
Hmm.
thought to myself, that coaching staff learned out of that game because they haven't done it since. They haven't asked him to
Yeah.
pass more than 18 times
Yeah.
since then in 6 weeks.
So
So,
obviously, if Ole Miss gets out to an early lead, it changes their strategy. They start to put too much pressure on Beck, and then they can win. If it's a low-scoring game, I think that benefits Miami.
I do too. I do too. I would not
Um,
be surprised if Chambliss makes some unbelievable plays in that game, though, in a
yeah,
loss. So,
I love Chambliss. So I mean, ideally, Indiana Ole Miss would be the matchup,
yeah, it
but
would. It would.
that way it'd be Chambliss Mendoza.
Yeah,
But I do think Miami's defense against Mendoza would be very, very exciting.
it would.
The U being back, ACC being maligned, and them getting all the way back. So, um, I think this is a really good matchup because we're dismissing Oregon like they're not even there, but they've been statistically, you know, probably the second best defense all year. And offensively, they have a lot of weapons. I like the
Yeah.
way they run the ball usually. They have monster linemen. They've got skill position players everywhere. Dante's a very good quarterback. So,
hmm
he's young, but I think that, he's 13th in QBR. He's got a 79
hmm
QBR rating.
hmm
Um, and they've had a number three power index. Oregon's had a tough season. They played hard, and
Yeah.
I think that they shouldn't be so dismissed so readily. But I think there's something missing there. There's a little bit of an edge that they don't quite have. I love their coach, so he can get them ready. But I think
So breaking
Indiana.
down the Miami Ohio State game, 24-14, I never felt like it was really a problem for Miami. They really felt like they had the game in control the whole time. Julian Sayin, for the first time as a freshman, really looked unsure many different times in this game. Didn't really know where to go with the ball. He was under a lot of pressure, having to get rid of the ball sometimes before he really wanted to. Had two really bad picks. There were two others that should have been picked and weren't. So he had a lot of problems in this game. He did have a pretty high level of yards thrown, but one of the reasons was Ohio State couldn't really get the running game going, whereas Miami could. And they had two guys that played really well out of the backfield. They didn't ask Carson Beck to do very much, 19 for 26 for 138 and a touchdown. And then the defensive line for Miami, I think, with Mesidor and Bain and the guys, they just were unbelievable in this game. They were like a wrecking crew. So, Robbie, what's your take on this game?
Yeah, I mean, Miami's defense was a huge part of their win. Not just um, it wasn't just Bane wreaking havoc, although that was a huge part of it. But it was Keontae Scott's pick six was huge. That was a massive moment where Sayan looked like a freshman. I
Mhm.
think that was just a glorious pick six, and I
It was
think that
almost
that
like he
set
was
it.
in the huddle, Robbie, like he knew what play was
Yeah,
coming. That's what it looked like.
yeah,
Yeah.
because he had to abandon his coverage to go float over, and I mean, he just completely knew where the ball was going. So that put him at 14-0 at halftime. It was a bit of a statement play because it felt like, Miami goes down and scores, and you'd think, that maybe Ohio State answers. Um, but the Miami defense was really significant. They had 5 sacks, 4 of them were in the first half. They really brought the heat, and I think you could really see saying, "My God, what's with these guys?" Like, I can't really do my normal um things. So they had the pick six, they had another pick. It was turnovers, Sand threw 2 picks, and I think that Ohio State just felt a little bit overwhelmed. Their
You know,
their
it's
offensive line
interesting.
could not hang with the defensive line of Miami.
It's interesting because the scouting report on Sayan all year was that he was so calm for a freshman, and he really never makes mistakes. They didn't ask him to do too much. He stayed within the offense. He stayed with the scripted plays. He was like that all year, and then he runs into a defense this good, and he really looked very shaky. He looked like a freshman. So, Cole, what did you think of this game?
Yeah, I think the biggest takeaway from this game I had was how good Miami's front seven on defense was. Like you said, they had three or
hmm
four sacks in the first half, two tackles for losses. They held Ohio State to 4 rushing yards at the half, and they didn't, they couldn't run the ball in the second half because they were already down. The game almost felt like it was over going into the half, even though it was only, I guess it was 14-0. Because like
Mhm.
you said, that pick six where he just shed the guy and ran, it was almost like he had seen that setup in film before and knew exactly what was going to happen. That
Yeah,
was a huge momentum swinger. That was when Ohio State was trying and driving and getting pretty far. I think they were right outside the red zone, about 30-yard line or
mhm.
so. Ran that back. That halted so much momentum they had. And then they limped into halftime with even less momentum after missing a field goal. I mean, it was 14-0, but it just nothing was going Ohio State's way.
Yeah.
So that was just really, I don't know if it was horribly surprising, but I didn't think it was going to be that drastic. I didn't think, like you guys said, Sam was going to look so bad in front of that defense. I figured he would face pass rush like that in the Big Ten, and it didn't look like
Mhm.
it in the first half.
I'm also, Cole, so used to Ohio State winning the time of possession battle. They did every single game this year except for this game. They even won it when they lost to Indiana. And this game, I don't think they knew what to do with it when they didn't have the ball as much as Miami. And that was an interesting thing. The other thing I'd mention is look how clean this game was from a penalties perspective. Miami didn't even have a
Yeah.
penalty.
There were two
And
penalties total in the game. I
yeah,
loved it.
that's such a
Both
clean
happened in the
game.
fourth quarter as well. They had 3 quarters of no
Yeah,
penalties at all.
it was
Yeah.
really cool to see. So, and then the other stat, Rob, you look at a lot is third down and fourth down conversions.
Oh yeah.
Miami clearly had the advantage there. So, any other
One other
thoughts
thing as well
about this game? Yeah, go ahead.
is first off, Beck is a better runner than I remember him being. Like he's not a, I wouldn't even call him like a maybe above average runner, but you would think he's a horrible runner, and he's not. He's probably average, slightly below average. He can come through if you need him to. And then you guys talked about this a little bit, but the last drive where Miami was up 17-14 and scored the touchdown, 5 minutes, was one of the best drives I've seen the entire season. The O-line
Mhm.
just was constantly creating gaps. It was everything was like they were having smart plays where if they
It's
had to
true.
block somebody, they would move up and keep
Hmm.
blocking down there. It looked the thing I enjoyed the most was that it looked really replicable. Like you can do that again against Ole Miss. So
Hmm.
just a heads up, if Ole Miss is in that same situation or Miami's in the same situation where they're up by, 3, 6, whatever, one possession game going down, I think they're probably going to end up pulling through like they did this game. I was really impressed with that drive a lot.
I
Yeah,
like to contrast these two teams. Think about it. You're Ohio State. You're used to beating teams down so hard in the first half that you can kind of take the accelerator off a little bit. And they were going to their best player, Jeremiah Smith, a lot. He had an incredible game.
you did.
And they were still losing. So like that's got to be terrifying. Your best player is has 157 yards and a touchdown, looked unstoppable, and yet you look at the scoreboard and you're losing. Whereas the other way around was Miami was saying we're going to hold you guys down so our offense doesn't have to do very much. Malachi Tony only had 16 yards receiving. And so they didn't need to panic because they didn't need a lot of points. Um, they were winning with defense, and Beck was playing well enough, and they were running the ball well, and they were kind of using the two-headed monster. I mean, Fletcher was getting the yards, and Charmar Brown got a touchdown. But Beck was 19 of 26 for 138 yards and a touchdown, but no mistakes. And so
Right. That's
their
the key to their
offense had no
success.
pressure on them.
Mhm.
They needed to do a little bit, not a lot, and the defense was going to carry the day and score and get turnovers and put lots of pressure on Ohio State. And so Malachi Tony was kind of quiet and they're not panicking. Meanwhile, Jeremiah Smith's going off the reservation and Ohio State's still losing. Like that's got to be a terrifying feeling. And so
Yeah.
psychologically, Miami dominated,
Well, it was interesting,
physically,
Robbie. It was
emotionally, mentally.
interesting because you and I both said Miami had a good shot in this game. But when I looked at the panels, just like I did with some of the other games, and I went and looked at all their predictions, it was 4 out of 5, 5 out of 6, all towards Ohio State, and all of them saying, we'll need to see Miami prove it to us, kind of thing. And so I just found it so interesting when these guys who are supposed to be experts and pundits they always pick the old blue blood every single time, and often don't have a good rationale behind it. Um, Find that
Well,
interesting.
they kept Carnell Tate pretty quiet.
Yeah, he had
And
like one catch late in the game.
they forced them to be one dimensional. So they kind of
Mhm.
held down Bo Jackson. to 55 yards rushing, which is not good enough to win at this level. So
Mhm.
I think Miami's game plan was amazing. I think that the coach kept talking about violence. He was teaching violence. He was
Mhm.
teaching them to fly around and hit as hard as you possibly can. And I think that he got in his players' heads, created a bit of a frenzy, and they just went out there and bullied Ohio State in a
That's
lot of
true.
ways. And
We
Ohio
saw
State's
those
used to
memes.
bullying the other teams. So
We saw the memes of the Buckeye, mascot being all bullied, and he had like black eyes and stuff, being loaded
yeah.
into an ambulance. And that's really how it kind of felt, was that Ohio State is not used to getting beaten up like this, and they really got beaten up in this game. It was
And they
pretty
really whipped that offensive line.
pretty wild to watch. This next game, Cole was talking about, to me, was the most surprising result, because not that Oregon won. I thought Oregon would win, but that I didn't think Texas Tech, who scored 43 points per game the entire season, would have this much trouble moving the ball. In a lot of drives, they couldn't even get a first down. So, Cole, what was your take on this game initially?
Oh man, there's a lot. I was really excited going into this. Do you guys remember when Texas Tech played Utah back in September at Utah? Do you guys have any
Yes.
any memory of that
Yeah.
game? This
Uh-huh.
reminded me of that game so much because I was watching Utah a lot this year. Really liked how the way they played, and that this game went a lot how that one did, where nobody really scored a lot in the first half, and there was so many mistakes, and it felt like Utah was always behind Texas Tech, but it wasn't horrible. And then they just more mistakes were made, and the defense wore out because Texas Tech had the ball so much, and eventually the score got overblown because it was they need to go for fourth down a couple times in their own territory to stay in the game.
Hmm.
Texas Tech
Yep.
scored on those drives. It's almost copy and paste what happened in this game between Tech and Oregon, but obviously the roles were reversed. They started off so good in the first half. I think it was Ben Roberts and Jacob Rodriguez, they're two top guys on defense. They both had 6 tackles. I think they had 2 tackles for loss, or no, 2 sacks and 5 tackle for losses in the first quarter, and it was 3-0. And then they ended up with the game with the same 2 sacks they had and only 4 more tackles for losses in the rest of the 4 remaining quarters. They just got beat down and tired. There was
Yeah.
38-22, I think, on the minutes distribution.
Yeah.
So
If
it's
you look
just
at that
defense
there at the
wore out
bottom,
over time.
that was the most lopsided of all the time of possessions in all the games. They really just didn't have the ball much. A lot of times they would either go, 4 and out and punt, or they'd have some type of turnover or mistake or huge penalty situation. I thought
Time of
Morton.
possession was time of possession was 38-22
Mhm.
in Oregon's favor.
Yeah, that's right. I thought Morton had a pretty good year this year. He just really looked very deer in the headlights in this game. He just could not handle the pressure.
Well, I think one of the most underrated units of all of college football is Oregon's defense.
Yes, I agree.
So, this was a tall order for a mediocre offense that's paired with an incredible defense, Texas Tech. Very mediocre offense. And
Hmm.
I think that they're used to the turnover battle where they have short fields, and um, you can turn that easily into a field goal, and then you can get some momentum going and get some of those
Hmm.
touchdowns, and then you start hearing national championship chatter. I never bought into all that because I felt like their offense was weak, and
Hmm.
this was the least surprising to me thing. Even though the score being that lopsided is kind of surprising, but
Hmm.
statistically, turnovers. Texas Tech gave the ball away 4 times and only got the ball once. At no point in their season would that kind of formula be a winning formula. So
And then
they're used to they're used to
Texas,
being the turnovers and
yeah,
getting 4 turnovers and then maybe giving the ball away once.
Texas Tech was the second best in college football this year for the entire season in fourth down conversions. They went 0 for 3 in this game, and they just
Mhm.
had kind of everything they're used to going right for them all year go wrong for them in this game. It was really a interesting display to see. I thought Dante Moore played well. He was very consistent. Most of his passes, though, were kind of West Coast offense, kind of short type routes. I am a little concerned about Oregon's running game. I think that when they play
Mhm.
Indiana, they're going to get torn apart at the line of scrimmage. So that's why I
Yeah, I
still
mean,
I still give Indiana an edge.
both of these teams couldn't run the ball. Oregon was averaging 1.4 yards a carry, and Texas Tech 2.6 yards a carry. Neither one is
Mhm.
acceptable if you're
Mhm.
going to be able to wear down a defense, grind it out, get play action. have your quarterback stay clean and get some nice looks. You've got to be able to run the ball. You have to be able to run the ball and play defense at this level. And if you can't, you're going to be in trouble. You're going to be Kalen DeBoer trying to throw every down. Quarterback's going to be on his back and going to have cracked ribs. It's not a winning formula. You have to be able to run the ball and play defense. If you can't do that, then you're probably not going to win. You're going to win you're going to win on your way up. You're going to beat some teams, but you're going to get stall out against the best teams.
100%.
I also want to shout out Brandon Finney Jr., the freshman who had 2 picks and a fumble recovery.
Yes. Yeah,
he also included 6 tackles in that too. I think he had the best performance the entire, at least this round of the playoffs, until Trinidad Chambliss in the Ole Miss game a little bit later in the night. But yeah, I will say I don't really believe, and I haven't believed in Oregon the entire year. I was really surprised about this result. They did what they were supposed to, and then some, especially on defense. But both teams in this game played way too fast, and Oregon did not have much success when they were playing tempo. They would run fast for 2 plays all the time, would barely get anywhere. Like they would throw an incomplete pass on 2nd down, then use the entire play clock to run a play and get set, and then they would have a 15-yard pass to get the 3rd and 12 when they actually played slow and methodical. So unless they can do that against Indiana, it's going to be tough for them to win.
You make 2 really good points, Cole. I'm glad you did. One is Finney should be called out because he had an incredible performance as a freshman. But secondly, the 3rd down conversion percentage for Oregon is really concerning. 4 for 19. It feels like on the money down, they're very ineffective. And I really wonder what that's going to do to them the next round.
The thing is, I really like their running game normally. I'm not really sure what happened, but Whittington I believe he's a top 10 running back, not statistically, but in talent wise. And they have a really big offensive line. So I don't really know what happened there, but I feel like they didn't like that matchup. They were a little afraid of Texas Tech's defensive line. So and linebackers, so they wanted to try to exploit what they could. And I guess they saw something in film that they wanted to attack. But in my notes, I definitely had Brandon Finney, their phenom freshman, with his 3 takeaways. Unbelievable performance. And also their defense with, what was his name? Ukulele?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's Uyangale. Same, yeah.
Uyangale. I watched that play and I couldn't believe it. He reminded me of the guy from the Bucks, Vea.
Do you think
a monster dude? Stole it from Baron Morton's, just tore it out of his hands and ran and almost got in. I was rooting for him to get in.
Do you guys think if Finney came out next year, which he can't, by the way, but if he could as a 19-year-old, you think he would be #1 pick in the draft? Or like 1st round pick, I guess, not maybe #1 pick in the draft, but
first round, yes.
Just on pure talent.
Yeah, probably 1st round, like you said. Another thing about Oregon is that I, for some reason, think that they should be able to run the ball. I think people sleep on the Texas Tech defensive line. I think it's one of, I watched a lot of their games. I think it is one of, if not the best defensive line in the nation. Maybe not top 1, but it's up there in the conversation.
I think it's definitely top 5.
And I think that Oregon, I think that that went about how I expected. Except for the quarterback. I think Dante is a pretty good runner, and I think he only recorded 1 run on the entire day. I think they're going to be able to run against Indiana. I can't quite explain it why. They had like 50-something, I think, rushing yards against Tech, and when they played Indiana earlier in the season, they had 90 or 95, something along those lines, which still is definitely below average. But I think they'll have closer to that, or 110, and they'll be able to run at least a little bit better against Indiana.
You want to know what Dante Moore's stats were?
What's that?
10 rushes for -12 yards.
Oh, that's what I mean. Okay, yeah. He had very low rushing yards.
That was a monster defense.
He's not really a running quarterback. That's what we found out. We found out over the last couple of weeks he's not a dual threat quarterback. He's a pocket guy. That's what he is.
But he can move. He can move. Like, he can move the pocket. He can move. He can get a 1st down. He's not a threat to take it to the house. But
so to me, this next game was the 2nd most shocking result after the Oregon shutout of Texas Tech, only because of the score. I did think Indiana would win this game. I thought it'd be about a 10-point margin. I didn't see 38-3 coming. and I didn't see this kind of margin with Indiana with 407 total yards, Alabama with 193. Of course, they played more than a half with their backup quarterback, but even Ty Simpson looked incredibly ineffective. You had a situation where Alabama just couldn't move the ball. You have their leading rusher for the game was Ty Simpson with 3 carries.
Hmm.
So, any thoughts about this game, Robbie? What was your first take when you saw it happening?
Well, it's it's awesome to watch such a well-coached team that has everybody bought in and all phases are equally important. The idea that an offensive lineman could win MVP of the game is so cool to me. I love that. Uh, it's
What a dream! And he's a center, right?
quarterbacks get so much
He's a center.
quarterbacks get so much credit, and
Hmm.
they deserve a lot. But the offensive line to me is usually where it's won or lost, and so to have that happen is so cool. You saw Alabama get really one-dimensional. It's not that they couldn't run the ball; it's that they didn't. I mean, the fact that Daniel Hill had 5 rushes, um, and Ty Simpson had 3, and those are your two, uh, high rushers for your team. Um, it was a pitiful running performance by an Alabama team that you think
Well,
of as all Americans 5 deep at running back for the last 60 years. Um, it's so weird to watch Kalen DeBoer Alabama teams. But
mhm,
you know, I don't think Indiana has a weakness, and I think they have complete buy-in. I think their coach knows how to push all the buttons, whether it's yelling at them when they're up by 30 or building them up when things aren't going great. He knows how to identify his guys. He
mhm,
loved Mendoza. I don't think it was obvious Mendoza was going to be a star. I think he did a nice job at Cal. He played well, but I don't think anyone would have seen him come out and be the Heisman winner. But that's what Signetti does. He takes everyone on the team and makes them the best version of themselves that you can, and that's what the great ones
mhm.
do.
That's right.
But if statistically, I thought Indiana didn't face much uh, opposition this year, and they didn't have that great. They were the number one power index team in the country, 28.9 FPI.
Right.
Um, Mendoza is second in QBR, 89.5 in the country. They're fifth in sacks in the country with 42.
Hmm.
They have number 7 in offensive yardage, 468.1. That's with a number one power ranking. So Mendoza was 24th, which is solid, 31.72. They don't throw nonstop. They have a balanced attack. Their defense is, like I said, fifth in sacks and just flying around the ball. Roman Hemby was 40th with 1,000 yards, so they have 1,000 yard rusher. They just do all the fundamentals. And
That's true.
one thing I heard Signetti say he was really, really proud of this year was how high ranked his special teams were. So
Hmm.
he's a detail guy. He's looking at every little thing, and he gets really upset no matter if his team just scored an 80-yard bomb. He'll see the offensive line on the backside miss his block and be really upset. So
Hmm.
he's a perfectionist. So it's
He is.
kind of unfair if you got to play Indiana because
And
they're
you look
gonna.
at this. You look at this stat line with Mendoza: 14 for 16 for 3 touchdowns and 192. They didn't really ask him
Yep.
to do very much. When they ask him to throw the ball, he's very effective and efficient. But they have such a efficient offense. They only ask him to throw it 16 times. And they have all these running backs running all over the place, and they just, I don't know, they just roll you. That's what they do.
They roll you on both sides of the ball. And
Yeah.
so you're looking for relief from somewhere. You're looking for somebody on your team to make a play, and you just keep getting steamrolled, no matter if you're on offense or they are. And so I'm not saying they're not beatable. They are. You'd have to have your best performance to beat them.
So Cole, I assume you were stunned by this result, but what were you thinking when you were watching it live?
I'm so glad you led it like that because live, I checked back the stats because this is what I was feeling live was that I couldn't believe how balanced the Indiana offense was when I was watching it. They
Yep.
in the first half when the game was so competitive before it got up to 17-0 at the half and they started running a lot more then because, clock, game script, all that. They had called 18 pass plays and 19 run plays. Now, obviously, what's his name ran for a bunch of those because he only finished with 16
Can be.
passes on the day attempts. but it felt like it was very balanced watching it, and the stats proved that up. That was just like I said before, like you guys just mentioned, it is so much fun watching this offense run. It is such a well-coached team. They care about details. They're detail-oriented, like you guys said. It is
Mhm.
just
Yeah.
that's what I was feeling, and it was proven completely by looking at the box score, the stats.
And then they're 9 for 14 on third down. They just excel in every category. That's what they do. So, yeah, this was an incredibly stunning result. It felt almost like kind of like with the Chiefs not making the playoffs this year. It felt a little bit like a dynasty coming to an end, kind of the Saban dynasty, because all of his guys now are out coaching these other teams. Have coaching carousel, or you have the coaching tree coming out of Saban. All four guys in the Final Four came from the Saban coaching tree, and so you have a situation where Alabama's lost all that talent over the years.
I also want to say they have three fantastic wide receivers. I believe it was Robbie that said it. Like Charles Becker is a
Yeah.
fantastic route runner. Elijah Surratt has been
Yeah.
consistent for a while, and neither of those guys made the catch of the year against Penn State because that was Omar Cooper Jr., who also has been playing well. Their top talent is very talented. They got a lot of options over there that are really good.
Yeah. They have three NFL wide receivers. They've got Hemby running the ball. They have tight ends, and their offensive linemen are winning MVPs. Their quarterback wins the Heisman. They don't have a weakness. Like, where do you
And
attack
then their
them?
and then their backup running back too, Hemby, goes off, has the best game of his career. So yeah,
Yeah.
I don't know what you do.
Your only your only chance is to run the ball, grind down the defense, have a tremendous time of possession imbalance, and get touchdowns and wear out their will. I mean, it's the only because they haven't really been there, but the chance of that happening is so small that you'd have to be a top running team to even think about doing that.
You
Alabama has
also
no
need
chance.
you need turnovers to beat Indiana, and they just don't turn it over. That you really do. You need to win the
Yeah.
turnover battle.
Yeah.
So
They don't ask Mendoza to do very much that's risky.
that's
So
right.
um,
What a
he, he's
demolishment.
he's throwing to NFL wide receivers that are going to win one-on-one battles,
It's true.
and it's it's a
So
well-oiled machine.
so by
It
far the
is.
most fun game, out of the four was this one in the Sugar Bowl. You had Ole Miss win 39-34 against Georgia. Same thing when I was flipping around, all the panels were picking Georgia. I told Rob before the game I really felt like Ole Miss had a chance because of Chambliss and Lacey.
Mhm.
They're two of the best at their position in the country,
Yeah.
and also because Ole Miss has a very good defense. And you saw in the first matchup of this particular matchup earlier in the year, Georgia had to barely hold on 41-35 against a very good Ole Miss team back then. And I was just thinking to myself, it's very hard to beat a very good team twice. So why not Ole Miss? And maybe they'll have a little chip on their shoulder after losing their coach. And that's exactly what happened. It looked like almost virtually the same game they had the first time, but this time Ole Miss makes a couple more special plays and finds a way to get it done. So, Cole, what was your take when you watched this game?
Well, first off, I wanted to say back to what Rob said about Indiana was that they had two really close or relatively close games early on in the year. One was against Old Dominion, the first game where they had a guy run for 179 yards in Old Dominion. The other close game was
Mhm.
against Iowa, which is exactly what you described, where it's time possession battle, it's running, it's hard nose on defense, forcing
Yep.
turnovers. That was way closer than it's supposed to be as
Low
well. So
scoring.
yeah,
Hmm.
yeah. So that checked all the criteria there. That makes a ton of sense. As for this game, it was just a ton of fun to watch Chambliss in the second half. He was so good. He went 13 for 13 coming out of the half. He was like you guys had mentioned before. He was an on-field leader, much more than I expected. I'm not sure how
Yep.
much was going on behind the scenes with the offensive coordinator, but it looked like he was making decisions, taking over, and it everything went pretty much perfectly according to plan for most of the second half for Chambliss.
Hmm.
It really did.
And
It's
let's face it, this was a really good game. Like this was the game to watch.
it was a great game, a really great. I enjoyed every minute of it. What was
Yeah.
funny was Georgia had more possession. Ole Miss had by far more yardage, largely because Chambliss had the game of his life. And one stat, Robbie, you look there on the screen and you look for who the sack leader is for Georgia, and there's nobody there. And the reason is because Chambliss made some of the most amazing
Yeah.
escapes from what would have been sacks against any other quarterback in the country. And he would somehow come out of this huge pile of people, come out and run, and sometimes pick up a first down with his legs, and sometimes do an unbelievable pass to somebody. He was just like an escape artist.
Yeah, it does remind me of the Chiefs when there's plenty of times where you feel like the team playing the Chiefs is actually a better team, but
Hmm.
Mahomes and Kelsey were good enough to overwhelm whatever the team was that they were playing that was probably the better team. So it felt like that where Lacey and Chambliss were just special enough to where they could wear down a better roster. I think Georgia might be a better roster, but um, just Chambliss, I'm such a fan, and it was a very weird ending because it was tied really late in the game, and then Chambliss threw a nice ball down the seam to put them in field goal range,
Hmm.
and then it was the weirdest finish with the safety,
Hmm.
which it hit the pylon, and and then it felt like the wheels came off right there, and then all those times they brought the stage on for the trophy. They took it on and off 3 times. So that was a
Yeah,
really weird ending, but
it was
man, what a
weird.
great game until that point.
It's interesting because the two performances against the Georgia defense that were the biggest this year were both by Ole Miss, and I wonder what it is about Ole Miss. It's almost like they've solved the Georgia defense because they just looked exasperated trying to stop these big time players for Ole Miss. And then also
Yeah.
Robbie Stockton. I told you I've always been worried about him. Not that he's terrible, but I just was wondering in my mind, could he really bring the whole thing home? Was he good enough? And I just thought he was a little bit short. He was not making some of the
I
plays
thought
that
he was
Chambers
fine. He
did.
was going toe to
He's
toe
okay.
with Chambliss.
He's okay.
I thought the quarterback
Okay.
play in this game actually was the only game where both quarterbacks played well. Um,
Mhm.
I didn't feel I always felt like in the other games, somebody was lacking. Somebody was making mistakes or
I think he
there
played
was
well, but I don't think he made a couple of the plays that Chambliss did. I really feel like the difference was Chambliss was just a little bit better. That's what it felt like.
The
So,
I tend
Ole
to
Miss
agree with
early in
that.
the game, I didn't think Ole Miss was really gonna. I didn't think they were gonna get blown out or anything, but I think they went up 6-0, and I kept thinking the
mhm,
entire time they're not gonna win this game off of field goals. Georgia's gonna score, and obviously they
mhm.
did. They were dropping passes that Chambliss put right down, like right at their numbers a couple times in the first half. And I
Yeah.
Mhm.
thought if they don't get out of this in the second half, it's not gonna last. I think they were down 12-21. And whatever was said, whoever said it in the halftime speech, it really got to him. I wanted to go back as well, what you guys have said about the Chambliss making miracles out of stuff. It was
Mhm.
Hmm.
back-to-back plays. It was 3rd and 7 on their own 28. He went all the way back to the 1 yard line
Yeah.
and then went back down to the 10, like up to the 10, and
It
threw it to
it looked
Lacey at
like
the
they were
line of
gonna get
scrimmage.
a safety on him.
Yeah, that's right. And threw it to the line of scrimmage. Safety, Lacey went through somebody, ended up getting hurt. The guy who tried to tackle him to get the first down. And then the very next play, he went back another 15 yards behind line of scrimmage to throw a 45-yard pass on the run, like perfectly to the guy who was going right. Just those back-to-back plays were just unbelievable. Some of my favorite, like two plays
Pat
of a quarterback,
Mahomes.
maybe ever.
He's literally like a
He looked like
magician in some ways.
he's like Pat Mahomes.
Yeah, yeah, he was.
But if you
You know,
And
look at the
that's not even
stats,
including the little flick pass he did too, like a couple plays after
oh, it was a
that.
great play. What a great play.
look at the
Backhand.
stats on Ole Miss. They're number two in offensive yards, 496.2 per game. The Trinidad Chambliss is fifth in QBR, 86.8. Keywan Lacey is third in rushing, 1464. And their defense is 48th in sacks. I think if they have a weakness, I think their defense can get overwhelmed.
It's
I'm
true.
not sure. I'm not sure their defense is good enough to win the whole thing.
Well, I'll tell you
Yeah,
what their weakness isn't is their kicker. This people aren't talking about this,
Yeah.
but not only was that Ole
Yeah.
Miss kicker fantastic, but the game actually came down to that Georgia missed 54-yarder that he shorted late in the second half or the first half. If that went in, that if you made that, the game would have been, it would have played out differently. But
it's
if you do
true.
that like it is, it'd be 37-37. They wouldn't have to do that weird safety and all that at the very end of the game. Nobody's talking
Yeah,
about
100%.
that.
it's
100%.
true.
All right, guys. Well, we're down to the final slide, and that is bracket picks. Who wants to go first? Who do you think is going to win both semifinals, and who's going to be the national champ?
Um, I think Indiana. is gonna keep it rolling, and I think the U is gonna get it done
You
in a
do?
low scoring game. I think that Ole Miss defense is gonna let them down, and I think um, Chambliss and Lacey are gonna have good games, but it's not gonna be quite enough.
Okay. Let's go win the Natty.
I think Indiana wins the Natty.
Okay. All right, Cole, it's time for you to go on record, man.
Yeah, I've been thinking about this the entire time. I fear I'm going to say the same thing that Rob is. I think I think go Ole Miss and Miami. I think Miami's going to win that game just because of how much pressure they're going to be able to put on Chambliss. I don't think he's going to play as good as he did in the second half of that game. I'm not sure you can replicate what he did then. So I think it's going to be close, but I think they're going to, like I said before, have the one score lead going into the last 8 minutes of the game. They're going to take care of business and just barely squeak out over Ole Miss. I'm struggling in this Oregon game, but I have to say Indiana because they haven't shown me a reason why I shouldn't pick them. And I like Indiana to probably win by 10, anywhere from 7 to 14 points in Miami or, against Miami in the national championship game.
I agree with that. I've got Indiana by a touchdown in that game. I think it will be closer than obviously the one against Alabama. I think Oregon's a very good team. They've got a very good defense. It'll be lower
Mhm.
scoring. So I like it to be like 27-20 Indiana. And then on the other side, I like Miami by 3. I think it's going to be a really entertaining, close 20-17 type low scoring game where Miami just absolutely harasses Chambliss all day and
Mhm.
doesn't give up any rushing yards. And then I like in the final, I like Indiana to win by about 10 points over Miami. I think you might see 1 or 2 picks from Carson Beck, and that'll be the difference. Indiana have a bunch of ball hawks in that defense. So,
By the
so
way, just as a note, how fun is it going to be to have Dan Lanning against Signetti?
oh man, it gets
That
about it. That's 1 and 2 to me. Those are the
you're going to
top.
have coaching adjustments, all kinds
Mm,
of great speeches at halftime, psychological
it's true.
edges, maybe trick plays, and just whew, it's going to be a
100%.
good coaching matchup.
Guys, drop us a comment who you think is going to win these really important games coming up. So,
You
Cole,
know
tell
what?
us a little bit about how they can contact you after the program.
Sure, sure. So I got my X right here, my Twitter. It's Cole Houck Hoops. I told you a little before about what I do, but it's right now it's watching high school boys basketball games and tweeting about that. That's mostly what I do there, but I'll branch out into football like this was and talking about basketball a little more often just throughout what I, not just what I do for work. And then my email right here as well. If you have any inquiries, any questions about basketball or football, as I'll be talking through the podcast with these guys, feel free to email me whenever you want to.
And you want to talk a little bit about the podcast you have coming up and how you're
Sure,
going to
sure.
be
So I'm
promoting
I'm
it?
have a better setup for this now. Not sure what's gonna be titled. I still have a bunch of question marks, but I know once I get it run up, I will link everything to these guys, and these guys will help me out here. So you'll hear about it very shortly. Probably have episodes come out next week or two if I can.
Yeah, and we're looking forward to coming on. If you ever want to have us, let us know.
Will do. Thank
Oh,
you.
it's always a pleasure having you on. You always know a lot of stuff.
You do.
You're an interesting guy, and you know a lot about several of the main sports. So I'm always excited to hear what you have to say. So thanks for giving us your opinions, and we really welcome your knowledge. And best of luck in everything you're working on too.
Thanks for
Thank
coming
you
on, Cole.
guys. Yeah, it's
You've
always a
been
blessing
great.
being on here. I appreciate you guys having me.
All right, final thoughts, guys, as we head into the last 2 weekends of college football. Robbie?
I think Dan Lanning is going to overextend his team, trying to get ready for Signetti. The injury report before the game is gonna be huge. No, I think this is gonna be a really good matchup. I'm excited about it. I think these college players have done an amazing job of keeping their eye on the prize. It's also kind of an experiment. This is a sort of a first time through where a lot of these rules are different, and it's a drawn out playoff system that's still getting tweaked. A lot of changes from last year, and then there'll be more changes the next year. It's really exciting having transfer portal and NIL keeping players in college longer. So
Mhm.
it's better football, and it's really good football. I'm excited to see the draft this year. There's so many good players available to help NFL teams. It's like it feels like there's more talent than I've ever seen before every draft now. And last year was supposed to be a down draft, but it had all these great players. It just wasn't great for quarterbacks. But nonetheless, that's an exciting piece of this too, is to watch these stars rise up and see how they handle the big stage, because they're gonna need that when they're first round picks for the Raiders.
100%. Final thoughts from you, Cole?
Yeah, it's just been a great season. It's been so much fun, like you said, with NIL and transfer portal, just trying to work your way through that. There's still so much that needs to be fixed, regulations and just rules, limitations on so much of that. But it's what we got right now. It's been a ton of fun. It's cool to see, like you guys have mentioned, new people coming in. The blue bloods kind of not dying out, but not being nearly as dominant as we're used to the last few
Hmm.
years. And I'm still waiting for Signetti to prove that he's human. That has not happened yet. I know I predicted Indiana to take care of business in their 2 games, but I do think there's an okay chance that Signetti will just have a tough situation that we wouldn't expected him to be in, and I'm curious to see how he responds to it between either this game and the national championship. So that'll be a ton of fun to
It's
watch.
certainly possible, yeah. He did smile once at the end of the game, so that was the first time I've ever seen him smile. So I agree with you about him being a robot. We'll see.
No, he definitely smiles when the victory's at hand.
Hmm.
But then he said his job is to make his coaches uncomfortable
Hmm.
and to make sure that he actually credited Mike Krzyzewski. He said the hardest thing to coach against is human nature. And he said human nature after a big win along the way in a tournament is to sit back and say we really did a great thing. And he said my job is to make everybody uncomfortable and get hungry again. And so I think that's where he's the master. Is we haven't seen the psychological side of coaching since Saban left. Uh, Somebody have this level of mastery of human nature and getting players to reach deep down inside and play with chip on their shoulder and hungry. You can hear it in his responses in the when the reporters ask him, "Is this such a big stage for Indiana?" And he says, "Why do you say that? I mean, just because our brand is Indiana, you don't think we belong here?" Or when they ask him, um,
He pushes back.
your
He does.
yeah, your team has never won at this big of a stadium, whether they're playing at Ohio State or whatever. And he said, this team's never played at Ohio State. So he doesn't accept a lot of the premises because he's a psychological master.
Hmm.
He can do it. So he's gonna stumble somewhere. Everyone's human. But I've been so impressed with the way that he pushes back on premises. He doesn't accept um, people falling into patterns of the blue bloods are just going to walk away with this thing. He's got that mindset of why not us? And he really has his team believing, and it's really exciting to watch it.
Well,
Um,
well, Cole thinks he's a robot. You don't, and I'm kind of somewhere in the middle. So we'll see what happens. Been an incredible season. Loved every minute of it. And guys, enjoy the next 3 games. It's gonna be a lot of fun. And thank you so much for joining the program. And please like and subscribe to the video. And drop Cole a comment. He'd love to hear from you. And we'll see you next time, Cole, on the program. And everybody, we'll see you next time on the Sports Guys.
Thanks for
Have a
joining
great
us,
one.
everyone.
See
Yep.
you guys.
See you.